Hi, my name is Robert Townsend, and it's hard to make a movie in Hollywood, but I did, with the help of a few friends and a few credit cards.
Before, there was only one role, and we would always be competing for that one role, and now there were 10 roles, and we were all working together. It changed my life. I came back to Los Angeles, and I said, I want to do more of that. That's really good. And it says, no, they only do one black movie a year.
For decades, Hollywood spun rumors about Robert Townsend. Some said he'd sold out, others claimed he'd lost his touch, and many believed he'd simply vanished. But the truth? It's far more shocking. Townsend wasn't gone. He was quietly building, creating, and fighting battles behind the scenes while the industry tried to erase him. From the explosive debut of Hollywood Shuffle to missed opportunities, secret blacklists, and projects the studios refused to back, his story is nothing like what you've been told. Now, at 68, Townsend is finally speaking out. Stick around, because the story you thought you knew about Robert Townsend is about to be completely rewritten.
J.W. Brooks, vegetarian fast food entrepreneur.
Blake Arrington, Rib King, Prince of Swine. I know you're behind this. You planted this, didn't you? Where did you get your information?
Your wife.
To really understand the truth about Robert Townsend, you first have to know about the wake-up call his arrival gave in Hollywood. The mid-1980s were a strange and frustrating time for black artists trying to break into film. The glory days of blaxploitation movies from the 1970s were long gone, and what remained was a wasteland of typecast roles. Townsend once said it felt like Hollywood never let black characters just exist as regular people. They weren't doctors, lawyers, or suburban dads. Instead, casting directors shoved black actors into the same old caricatures: pimps, criminals, slaves, or cartoonish comic relief. Townsend lived this firsthand. Along with friends like Keenen Ivory Wayans, he found himself trapped in a soul-crushing loop of auditions. Townsend would walk into casting calls only to be asked to act more jive or be more street. One particular audition cut him deeply. After contorting himself into the role, he overheard the white director whisper, "He's all wrong. I need a N-word." That moment burned itself into Townsend's memory. It wasn't just insulting, it was a wake-up call. He turned to Keenen Ivory Wayans and said something that would define his career. "If we don't make our own movies, we're gonna die doing this." That was the spark that lit the fuse for Hollywood Shuffle.
With that money, and I was like, let's make a movie. And it was like, but you never did it before. And I said, it doesn't look hard. I've been on enough sets. I could do it. We could do this. We could do this.
Townsend had no studio backing, no powerful producer behind him, not even formal training as a director. What he did have was determination. He scraped together around $60,000 from the acting jobs he'd landed, money his friends told him to use on a Porsche. Instead, he bet it all on his dream. When the cash ran out, he did the unthinkable. He financed the rest of the movie on a stack of credit cards. By the end of it, he had buried himself in nearly $40,000 of debt. And yet, Townsend refused to quit. He and his tiny crew became guerrilla filmmakers. They worked weekends because everyone had day jobs. They scrounged leftover scraps of film, called short ends, donated by other productions, so they never even knew if the footage would match from one day to the next. They begged for locations, convincing one theater owner to let them shoot before opening hours, if they promised to mop the floors afterward. Townsend wasn't just directing, he was writing, producing, acting, feeding the crew, and even driving people to set. It wasn't glamorous, it was exhausting, but it was real. Then came the payoff. When Hollywood Shuffle premiered in 1987, it wasn't just a movie, it was a lightning strike. Through sharp sketches like the infamous Black Acting School, where black actors are taught how to shuffle and talk jive for white directors, Townsend pulled back the curtain on Hollywood's racism. But it wasn't just a bitter critique. It was funny, brilliant, and painfully relatable.
Movie Hollywood Shuffle is basically making fun of Hollywood. That's the whole idea, isn't it?
Yeah, it's making fun of Hollywood and the actors and what goes on and what everybody goes through in Hollywood.
Everybody has to go through it.
Oh yeah,
The same stuff.
Well, see, it deals with my life as an actor, the stereotyping. I've auditioned for muggers, rapists, slaves. I knew I was never going to win an Oscar for playing a rapist.
Right.
I raped Sally Field in that last movie.
Audiences got it. Critics praised it. Suddenly, Robert Townsend was no longer another struggling actor. He was a voice that couldn't be ignored. And almost immediately, Hollywood had to take him seriously. He went from maxed out credit cards to directing one of the biggest stars in the world, Eddie Murphy, in Eddie Murphy Raw, also released in 1987. That film became one of the most successful stand-up specials ever put on screen. Townsend didn't stop there. In 1991, he directed and co-wrote The Five Heartbeats, a powerful drama inspired by real-life R&B groups like The Temptations and The Dells. Though it wasn't a massive box office hit at the time, it became a cult classic, celebrated for its heart, music, and authenticity. 2 years later, he took another bold swing with The Meteor Man, one of the first black superhero films.
Meteor Man's in town.
Long before Marvel dominated theaters, Townsend put himself in the role of a school teacher turned reluctant hero, bringing a message of empowerment to kids who rarely saw themselves as superheroes on screen. Think about that. In just 6 years, Townsend made an indie satire, a blockbuster comedy special, a musical epic, and a superhero movie. He was proving himself over and over as a Rubik's Cube of talent. Actor, writer, director, producer, refusing to be boxed in by Hollywood. But success is a double-edged sword. For every door Townsend kicked open, powerful voices were trying to shut it again. And as the 90s rolled into the 2000s, the rumors started. Industry insiders asked the same question over and over. What happened to Robert Townsend? That's where the story takes a darker turn. Because when a revolutionary voice gets quiet, the establishment doesn't sit around waiting. They write the story for you. And the official story Hollywood spun about Robert Townsend wasn't the truth. It was a narrative that erased a trailblazer. And that's the lie we're about to unravel. By the mid to late 1990s and into the 2000s, Robert Townsend wasn't showing up in headlines the way he had after Hollywood Shuffle or The Five Heartbeats. And that's when Hollywood did what it so often does to trailblazers who refuse to play by its rules. It rewrote his story. What started as rumors hardened into a kind of official truth, a narrative that tried to explain away his absence while quietly protecting the system that had pushed him to the sidelines. The first rumor was the harshest, that Robert Townsend had sold out. This talk started swirling right after The Meteor Man in 1993. Think about that. Here was one of the very first black superheroes ever on screen, played by Townsend himself, in a movie packed with legends like James Earl Jones, Bill Cosby, Luther Vandross, and even a young Don Cheadle. Townsend wasn't trying to cash in. He was trying to break ground, to create something kids had literally never seen before. A black man as a superhero who saved his own community. But instead of celebrating that vision, some critics sneered. They compared it to the biting satire of Hollywood Shuffle and decided he'd watered himself down. They couldn't see that The Meteor Man was the logical extension of his mission, showing black life as strong, diverse, and heroic. Yet the sellout label stuck, because it was the easier story to tell. Then came the quieter dagger. that he had lost his touch. This is Hollywood's favorite trick. Starve a filmmaker of opportunities, then call them irrelevant when their name isn't on billboards anymore. After the Five Heartbeats in 1991, Townsend wanted to make more ambitious films, but big studios weren't handing him blank checks. In fact, they weren't handing him checks at all. Instead of recognizing that he was being locked out, critics and insiders began to whisper that maybe his early hits were flukes, a one-hit wonder, a two-film wonder. That's the cruelest lie, because it turns the industry's own gatekeeping into the artist's personal failure. And finally, the laziest rumor of all, that Robert Townsend just quit, that he'd made his money, had his run, and decided to coast. That story only works if you never really knew the man. This is the same guy who maxed out credit cards and begged for leftover film stock to make Hollywood shuffle. The idea that he would suddenly lose his hunger is laughable, but it was convenient. If people believed Townsend just walked away, then no one had to ask the harder question: who in Hollywood was slamming the door in his face? Together, those three labels, the sellout, the has-been, and the quitter, became the official unofficial story of Robert Townsend. It allowed Hollywood to put his early work on a nostalgic pedestal while erasing the man himself. For nearly 30 years that lie worked. But here's the thing, Robert Townsend never stopped working. He never stopped building. He was deliberately made invisible. And the unraveling of that lie tells us a lot more about Hollywood than it does about him. The idea that Robert Townsend disappeared from Hollywood only works if you weren't really looking. If you define success only as blockbuster directing gigs in Hollywood's studio system, then maybe, just maybe, the lie sounds convincing. But the truth is, Robert Townsend never stopped creating. He never stopped pushing. What really happened is that he stepped outside Hollywood's neatly drawn lines. And once he did that, the gatekeepers pretended he no longer existed. Want proof that the disappearance was nothing more than smoke and mirrors? Let's rewind to the mid-90s. In 1995, right when rumors about him fading away were starting, Townsend co-created and starred in a sitcom called The Parenthood.
Magic talent for me.
Really?
Yeah. Me and your dad used to have a magic act when we were your age.
Yeah. Wendell, if we would have kept going, right now we could be the world's greatest magician.
Now, this wasn't just some side project. It was one of the very first shows to launch the WB network, which would later give us cultural giants like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Dawson's Creek, and Gilmore Girls. Townsend's show ran for 5 full seasons and produced 90 episodes. That's not disappearing. That's building television history. And the role he played on screen was revolutionary in its own way. Townsend portrayed Robert Peterson, a loving husband and a college professor raising a middle-class black family in Manhattan. At a time when black sitcoms were often pigeonholed into stereotypes, The Parenthood showed a different reality, a smart, stable, funny, and relatable black family simply living life. It stood alongside other 90s sitcoms like Family Matters and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but Townsend's show carried his trademark touch, spotlighting dignity and positivity without losing humor. Yet somehow, Hollywood still tried to tell the story that he had vanished. But Townsend's dreams were always bigger than just a single show. He wanted to change the system itself. That vision led him to one of the boldest moves of his career, the Black Family Channel.
The Black Family Channel is here. This is my place.
My place for entertainment.
It's my place for sports.
For news and information.
For drama.
For music.
It's a channel for me.
The Black
Family
Channel. #1. Everybody from 8 to 80 can watch.
It's my channel.
My channel. It's my channel.
My place.
Starting in the early 2000s, Townsend stepped into the role of president and CEO of production for the new cable network, dedicated entirely to producing uplifting, family-friendly programming for Black audiences. Think about how radical this was. While major networks were still debating if diversity sold, Townsend was running an entire channel on that very foundation. The Black Family Channel produced original content and gave opportunities to young Black creators who otherwise wouldn't have had a platform. For a time, it reached millions of homes across America. The network eventually shut down in 2007 and was later sold. But to call it a failure completely misses the point. It was a revolutionary act of ownership, an attempt to bypass Hollywood's closed doors and build a whole new house. That takes vision and courage, two things Townsend has always had in abundance. And while all of that was happening, he never stopped directing. In 2001, he directed Carmen, a hip-hop opera for MTV, starring a then up-and-coming Beyoncé. That project has since become a cult piece of pop culture history. He directed Livin' for Love, the Natalie Cole story, which earned critical acclaim, and 10,000 Black Men Named George, which told the important but overlooked story of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, the first Black labor union in America. Here's a fact Hollywood rarely mentions. At the 2001 NAACP Image Awards, Townsend made history by directing 3 different actors who were all nominated in the Best Actor/Actress category for 3 different projects. That's almost unheard of. And let's not forget his HBO comedy specials, Robert Townsend and His Partners in Crime, which gave a national stage to fresh, raw talent.
Is it the music? Is it the sound? We've got an alternative. Easy listening rap right here on Townsend. How did you guys get started? Where'd you guys come from?
We from New York City originally. That's what we still there, the project. And it's like what happened is I got little brothers, man. I got 4 little brothers, and they enjoy hip hop music, and I don't want them to die, because if they die.
The Wayans brothers, for example, got some of their earliest exposure through those specials. Townsend wasn't just working, he was actively shaping the careers of future stars. So how does all of this get erased? How do you look at a man running his own channel, creating hit TV, directing groundbreaking films, and still say he disappeared? Simple. You ignore him. You tell the world his work doesn't count because it wasn't backed by a major Hollywood studio or marketed with millions of dollars. Hollywood decided that if Townsend wasn't playing their game, they would pretend he wasn't even on the field. And here's where it gets interesting, because the truth behind why Robert Townsend's career was made invisible has less to do with talent and everything to do with politics, power, and the price of being honest in an industry that punishes those who speak out. So why? Why would an industry that thrives on talent, charisma, and creativity push someone like Robert Townsend to the sidelines? After decades of speculation and rumor, Townsend has finally confirmed the truth. He was blacklisted. Not the old Hollywood Red Scare kind of blacklist with official memos and public hearings. This was subtler, quieter, but just as effective. Doors stopped opening. Phone calls went unanswered. Deals that were supposed to happen mysteriously fell apart at the last minute. Projects he was perfect for were handed to less qualified people, while whispers followed him like shadows. He became labeled difficult, a polite but loaded euphemism often used to dismiss artists of color who refused to bend their vision to industry expectations. The spark that set this in motion? Hollywood Shuffle. Townsend's debut film wasn't just a comedy. It was a bold indictment of Hollywood itself. It held up a mirror to the casting practices, the casual racism, and the typecasting that had been normalized for decades. Executives weren't laughing. They were being accused. Townsend has recounted private calls from studio heads shortly after the film's release, warning him that he would never work again. The message was clear: bite the hand that feeds, and it will bite back. But for Townsend, that hand had been feeding him poison, and he refused to swallow it. The consequences were immediate and far-reaching. His insistence on telling authentic Black stories with respect and nuance became a liability in the eyes of decision-makers. Getting funding for subsequent projects became a battle, no matter how visionary the concept. The Meteor Man, a family-friendly superhero film released years before Marvel's cinematic boom, faced weak marketing and a botched rollout, not because the film lacked potential, but because the studios didn't know how to handle a Black director creating content on his own terms. Even when he wanted to branch into musicals or dramas, he was boxed in as the satire guy, limited by an industry unwilling to let him evolve. The message was unmistakable: you can succeed, but only on the fringes. You can have influence, but never the full power. For years, fans whispered about Townsend being blacklisted, but it remained speculation. Now, he has openly confirmed it, sharing stories of collapsed deals, missed opportunities, and the systematic pushback he faced. Understanding this changes the narrative entirely. Townsend didn't disappear because he chose to retire or because he lost his touch. He was systematically sidelined for daring to be honest, for refusing to compromise, for insisting that Black stories could be told with dignity and creativity. Hollywood tried to silence him, and for decades, the world bought the cover story. But here's the thing about truth. You can bury it for a while, but you can't bury it forever. Townsend's integrity became the very thing that kept his legacy alive. And soon, he would find a way to reclaim the narrative. Because as you're about to see, Hollywood didn't get the last laugh. Robert Townsend did. In recent years, the culture has finally started to catch up, and Robert Townsend is finally getting the recognition he was denied for so long. The first big signal came in February 2023, when the Criterion Collection, the gold standard for important cinema, released a brand new 4K restoration of Hollywood Shuffle. Now, if you're not familiar, a Criterion release isn't just a DVD or Blu-ray, it's a statement. This movie matters. It's a landmark. It belongs in the canon of great cinema. For Townsend, it was decades in the making, a public acknowledgement that the very film that once got him blacklisted was in fact brilliant and culturally transformative. The honors didn't stop there. In August 2024, the Directors Guild of America, the same organization representing the directors who had once overlooked him, held a special tribute celebrating his career. In a packed theater, DGA President Leslie Linka Glatter spoke about his incredible impact and his unwavering commitment to diversity, words that must have felt like validation after all the years of quiet struggle. Filmmakers who owe part of their voice to him, like American fiction director Cord Jefferson, shared how Hollywood Shuffle planted the seed for what they believe was possible in storytelling. It wasn't just inspiration, it was a blueprint. You see Townsend's influence everywhere now. The sharp, self-aware satire of Atlanta echoes his fearless critique of Hollywood's racial stereotypes. Jordan Peele, building his own production empire, owes a nod to Townsend's DIY, self-financed independence. The DNA of Hollywood Shuffle is alive in every filmmaker who dares to challenge the system, to tell Black stories honestly, and to refuse compromise. Today, Robert Townsend is far from a tragic figure. He's a celebrated elder statesman of film and television. He teaches filmmaking at USC, mentoring the next generation of storytellers. He's still actively directing, with recent work on shows like The Best Man, The Final Chapters, and Power Book 4, Force. And he's earning new praise for acting, appearing as the loving father of Ayo Edebiri's character on the critically acclaimed series The Bear. The industry that once tried to erase him is now forced to celebrate him. The rumors, the whispers, the blacklist, they all crumbled under the weight of his legacy. Robert Townsend didn't just survive Hollywood's rejection, he reclaimed it. He didn't just get the last laugh, he got a standing ovation. After decades of fighting for truth and authenticity, he finally got the recognition he deserved, proving that integrity and talent can never truly be silenced. Which part of Townsend's journey surprised you the most? Share with us in the comments. If you enjoyed this story of Robert Townsend, make sure to give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss a deep dive into the stories behind Hollywood's most fascinating figures.